and welcome. This will be a video about building an app using React that will work with a web API. And for this project, we're going to use the Open Weather Map API because it's easy and it's free. Okay, and in the end, we'll be building an app that displays the weather data. So we'll enter a zip code or a city code or a latitude and longitude, and then our app will go and fetch the weather data and display it. Okay, so you need a place to work. I'm going to work in this folder right here. And the first thing I want to do is open up my terminal. So here's terminal right here. And if you don't know where terminal is, go look for it in the in your applications folder, right? It might be in utilities in there. Okay, so I'm going to open up terminal right here, and I'll make the text a little bigger. And what I want to do is I want to navigate into this directory right here. So I always like to do it this way. I'm going to type cd and then just drag this folder into the terminal window, and it'll give me a path to that directory. And so if I hit return here, now we're in the class 7 folder, right? So the next step is to build the default React project. So I'll type in npx create-react-app followed by a space and the name of my project. So I'm going to call it Weather App. And what's going to happen here is the npx command is going to run, and it's going to create a brand new folder with the name that we gave, and then it's going to download a bunch of files and put them in this folder. Okay, so that'll take a moment, so we'll wait for that to start. Right, you can see it's already downloading stuff right there, right? And then this is all the default code that's supplied to us from the Create React App Starter project. And this is probably the best starter code for React. It's really pretty good. And we're almost done here. One more moment there. Oh, there we go, almost done. Oh, maybe there's a little more. Okay, so it's just loading everything here. Oh, there we go. Okay. And what I'd like to do is open this up in my code editor. So I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, and you can just drag. I like to drag stuff around. So I'm going to just drag this folder on top of Visual Studio Code, and it will open up here, and I'll see all of my files right here. And these are all the same files that we have in the folder here on the desktop. They're just in a different view, right, in VS Studio. Okay, so in a React project, you're going to work in the source directory. So these other files are, they're there, and you might edit these, but usually not. All the files that you edit are usually in the source directory here. Okay, so we have a couple files here. Index is kind of our entry point into the app, and usually we don't edit any of the code in index. Okay, app.js is where we start writing our code. So we're going to start modifying the code here. Okay, so let's take a look at what our app looks like right now. So I'm going to go to my terminal again, and while I'm in this class 7 directory, I'm going to move into the weather directory. So I'll type cd, and then I'll start typing weather and hit the tab key, and it'll spell out the name of weather app. So I'll type that and then hit return, and now I'm in the weather app directory, and I'll launch my React app by typing yarn start. Oh, if you might run into this, it's telling me like I don't have the right dependencies, right? So it's giving me like, hey, you have some problems, right? And then it says if you'd prefer to ignore this check, because it's basically saying like I have just 26.6, or it actually wants 26.6, but it's telling me that I have 26.3 or 26.6.3, right? So I actually have a newer version, right? So, I think this is going to be okay to work, and it's pretty close to that one. So what we can do to make it run anyway is copy this line right here that says skip pre-flight check equals true. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to our project here, create a new file in the main directory, and call it .env. So you got to have a dot in there. So I'm going to put .env, and we're going to paste this skip pre-flight check into the .env file. Oops, I'm going to hit save there, right? Okay, and then we can run our code again. So I got the .env file here, and it says skip pre-flight check, and I saved it. So what I'll do is I'll run my command again. So I'll run yarn start again. And oh, there's our React project. So what we have here is, if we look in the source directory again, we go to app.js. What we're seeing here is what is in app.js. So I see the header, I see the logo, which is this image, I see edit code source app.js, that's this right here, and then I see this anchor tag right here that says learn React, and it's the link at the bottom. So what I want to do is I want to just get rid of all this. So I'm going to delete everything except for the div that says app, and then I can also get rid of this logo right here because I'm, the import for the logo, because I'm not using it. So I'll delete that, and now my app looks like this, right? So it doesn't look like much. So let's add some stuff, right? So what I want to do is I want to put a form in here that has an input and a button. Right? So I got my input, my button, and then I'm going to say, let's say submit for the button. So I'll save that, and then it's hard to see, but you can see there's my input is right here, and then there's my submit button, right? So that's kind of working. We need to do a little bit of work here to make this even better. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to set the button type to submit. And what this will do is it'll submit the form when the button is clicked or tapped or pressed, okay? And then next, I want you to be able to type in your zip code here in the input field, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to set the type to text. We could set it to number also. But I'll just do type here, and then I'll say or I'll do type as text, and then we'll do placeholder is enter zip, okay? And now you can see the placeholder text shows up there. And then we're going to have to add a few more things here. What I want to do is I want to be able to track what you type into this input field. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the input pattern, right? So the React has a form input pattern that we use. They call it the controlled component pattern. And what we're going to do to use this is we're going to use state. So I'm going to go to the top here and I'm going to import from React. And what I want to import is I want to import use state. Okay? So this will allow us to create a state variable, and state's important in components because changing the value of state causes the component to render. So that means if we, enter some value here, we want to redraw the component, or if someone clicks the button, maybe we want to redraw the component. For example, like if you entered your zip code here and click the button, we might want to change state and then load the weather data, and when the weather data loads, we want to redraw the component again, right, and show the data that we've loaded, okay? So I've got state here, and we use state to manage the value that's displayed in an input field, right, or any kind of form element, and that's called the controlled component pattern. So what we'll do to make this work is we'll first define a state variable up here at the top. So I'm going to say const, and I'll use the square brackets, and I'll say equals use state. Okay, so that's my setup there, const square brackets equals use state, and I'll make the name of a variable here. So I'm going to put in zip, and I'll follow it with set zip. Okay, so zip is my variable. It has the value in it, and set zip is a function, a setter function that lets us change the value of zip. Okay, use state allows us to initialize the zip variable with a value. So I'm going to put a value here, and I'm going to make it the empty string. Okay, so that means zip will have a default value of the empty string. Okay, now we're going to use these two things in our input. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say value equals zip. So by doing this, we're going to see the value of zip in the input field. So if I was to type, hello in here, then we would say see hello in the input field. Okay. And then below that, we're going to type in on change. Okay. So on change is an event that occurs when the text in the field, in this input field, changes. Okay. So whenever the text in here changes, what I want to do is I want to update the value of zip to match the value that you've typed into the field. So what we're going to put in here is a function, okay? So I typed the whole thing as an arrow function, but the arrow functions give us some special syntax that let us, pare down the number of characters that it requires to write the function, right? So I'm going to write the whole thing out at first just to show that we have a whole function here, right? And this function takes a parameter that is an event object that says what just occurred. So I'm going to type E in here to represent the event object. And an arrow function, if you have a single parameter, you don't have to have the parentheses. So I'll just put E there. And then I'm going to type a block of code in here, right? So also, the arrow function, if you have a single line of code, you don't have to have the curly brackets. So I'm going to get rid of those too, right? So my function is effectively just the equals and the arrow right here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to call set zip. And then the value here is the new value that we want to assign to the zip variable. And I'm going to get that from e.target. So e.target represents the element that just generated the onChange event, which would be this input right here. And I'm going to ask the input, hey, what's your value? Okay. Oops, there we go, right? So I'm going to just type e.target.value. Okay. And this isn't going to change much, but this is the correct setup that we want here. Okay. It's going to work differently internally, but it's going to look the same when you actually run the code. So if I start typing in here, you can see everything works. I should be able to type in there. I can type in my zip code 99999, right? And everything's working, okay? So let's save that. So let's do one more thing before we're done with this video. What I'd like to do is I'd like to break out this stuff into its own component, and that'll make it our code more modular, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a brand new file, and I'll save it, and I'll call it weather.js, okay? And I'll save it to the source directory, okay? And what I want to do is I want to move all of this stuff into weather.js. I'm actually just going to copy everything here in app, right? So I'll just copy the whole app component and paste it. This is a quick way to do it, right? And I'm going to change the name of my component to weather. So it's a typical pattern to name the file after the component. So my component is named weather, so I've named the file here weather.js, right? And at the bottom here, I'm gonna type export default weather. Okay, so I'm gonna export the weather component. I've got a component here called weather, and then I'm gonna export it, okay? And I have a div here that says app, but it's typical to use a class name on your elements that matches the name of the component. So I'm going to change that name to weather also. Okay, so that sets up my component here. And then you're probably thinking, well, yeah, but you have all this stuff in app. Well, you know what we're going to do here now is I'm going to go back to app, and I'm going to remove all of this stuff, right? That form that I created. And I'm going to get rid of this zip code, the use state right there. I'll delete all that. So that's kind of back to where we were at the beginning. And what I want to do now is I want to import my, you can see my form is gone. I want to import the weather component and use it here. So what I'll do is at the top here, I'll say import weather from, and then if you want to import a local file, you put the // here, and then you can see I can choose any one of my local files. So I'm going to import /weather. And to use that component here, I'll use the angle brackets and type weather/ and then the closing bracket. Okay? And then there I'm back to where I was, and I have my weather component. Okay? So anyway, so that got our project all started. We're off the ground here and we're rolling. So thanks for watching, and we'll continue in the next video. Okay?